the week and figure out how to do the Zoom
Okay, so recording started.
or do the
Okay,
YouTube.
How many attendees do we have?
27.
34.
Oh,
I've got 33 on mine.
Oh,
I
good,
have 34 as well.
good. All right.
So I'm just admitting everybody because they're just connecting.
Okay,
I
You
think,
can admit everybody, just don't admit to everybody.
was that a joke?
Little
was
play on
supposed to
words,
be.
Pam.
It was supposed to be. He has a very dry sense of humor,
Yes.
kind of like my husband.
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
All right, we're good.
All right. I want to welcome everyone to the March 24th, 2021 Rush Town Board meeting. Thank you very much for coming. I hope you will participate. And I'd like you to join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
To the flag.
to the flag of the United States of America
To the
and to the
republic.
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Would the town clerk please call the roll?
Councilman Wilbur,
Here.
Councilwoman Corbin,
here.
Councilwoman Wickerham,
Here,
Councilman Lang,
Here.
Supervisor Cusey.
Here, thank you.
You're welcome.
Just a couple of quick announcements. You will find these in the upcoming newsletter, and that is the annual Rush Cleanup Day is coming. It's taking on a little different format this year, so look it up, and I hope everyone participates. There will be special events to celebrate Earth Day and Arbor Day. That will be in the newsletter, and we have the Monroe County in Bloom for 2021. I mentioned that at the last meeting. It's worthy of being mentioned again. That is where we obtain plants to beautify our campus and some of the roadside areas in town, the park and ride area. And there's also a new schedule out for the rifle range. If anyone would like that schedule, we can provide it to you. We will now go into the public comment period. Please remember that there are other people listening. What you can say is what you feel in your heart, what's true, and move on from there. Thank you.
Supervisor Cusey, this is Councilwoman Corbin. I just wanted to remind everyone that at last town board meeting, we reinstated the chat feature. It will be a direct chat to myself. And so if you would like to speak, please write your message in the chat feature, list your name and your address. If you are on a telephone, please unmute yourself. And again, let us know your name and your address, and we will welcome your comments at the public first comment period. As of right now, Supervisor, I do not have anyone in the chat requesting to speak at the public comment period 1.
That's
If
okay.
anyone, for any other reason, thinks I missed you, please let us know. But right now, I do not see anyone there.
Your comment was worthy of announcing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
No one in the public comment. Okay, let's move on to the approval of minutes. We have the regular meeting of I don't know when that is, but the regular meeting of February 24th. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the town board meeting minutes of February 24th, 2021 as submitted by town clerk Pamela Bucci. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Councilman Wilver,
Aye.
Councilwoman Corbin,
Aye.
Councilwoman Wickerham,
Aye.
Councilman Lang,
Aye.
Supervisor Cusey,
Aye. Moving on to the meeting of March 10th. Do I have a resolution to accept those minutes?
Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to amend one of the resolutions from the last town board meeting in
Please do
regards to
so.
the chat feature. Attorney Mancuso and Town Clerk, please make sure I'm doing it properly. I so move to amend resolution 101-2021 of the draft town board minutes of March 10th, 2021, so as to amend the record as the Zoom chat feature will be reactivated for all board meetings, town board, planning board, zoning board of appeals, beginning March 15th, 2021. The following modifications will be made in the town clerk Zoom account setting. 1, the town clerk and deputy supervisor will be co-hosts for all town board meetings. 2, sending a chat from an attendee will be sent only to the deputy supervisor at town board meetings. A, the attendee will write their name, address, and when they like to speak. B, the deputy supervisor, at the direction of the supervisor, will identify the attendee in the chat at town board meetings and turn on off their video and audio in the order they appear in the chat. 3, deputy town clerk will be host for planning and zoning board of appeals meetings. A, sending a chat from an attendee will be sent to the deputy town clerk at planning and zoning board of appeals meetings. B, the deputy town clerk at the direction of the chair of the planning board and zoning board of appeals meetings will identify the attendee and turn on or off their video and audio in the order they appear in the chat.
I'll second that.
Councilman Wilver,
Aye.
Councilwoman Corbin,
Aye.
Councilwoman Wickerham,
Aye.
Councilman Lang,
Aye.
Supervisor Cusey,
Aye. Moving on to the approval of the abstract, Councilperson Wickerham.
Oh,
Su-
that's me.
Supervisor, I just want to, Councilwoman Wickerham, Attorney Mancuso, since we amended just that resolution, do we then have to approve the minutes with that amended resolution in it?
Yes, you'd want to
Yeah.
approve as amended.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I called the roll before this, it was seconded.
Well, we
Okay.
amended the resolution and that's what the roll was for, right?
Yes,
And now you just, Amber just has to ask for the minutes to be approved.
All right, I will make a motion to approve the amended town board meeting minutes of March 10th, 2021, as submitted by the town clerk Pamela Bucci.
I'll
Is
second
there a
that.
second?
Yep, I'll second that.
Councilman Wilver,
Aye.
Councilwoman Corbin,
Aye.
Councilwoman Wickerham,
Aye.
Councilman Lang,
Aye.
Supervisor Cusey,
aye. Back to you, Councilperson Wickerham.
Okay, I will read the resolution, but I also, before we take the vote, I have a couple of questions and or comments. So I move to, having reviewed all vouchers, numbers 228 through 275, that they be approved for payment in the amount of 76,466.80. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, and I have a couple of comments as I was reviewing those. One of them, I just wanted to let the board know that I came across the bill for American Rock Salt. And I'm going to be asking the finance director if she can do an analysis of the fuel surcharges, because I would be interested in finding out how much our fuel surcharges at least from American Rock Salt. They do have that as part of their bill. So I'd like to know how much they've increased their fuel charges over the past year, considering the increase in fuel costs, at least from my household. So I'm going to be asking the finance director for that report. I'll write her an email and copy everybody in. One of the other, a couple of other ones, I came across a legal, a bill for legal fees for a firm called Abrams. I'm just clarifying that that is not the same firm that is also handling our solar. Is that correct?
I believe it is the same firm.
Yeah.
So the
I did
same
not
firm.
see that on there. What number? was
Well,
it?
it was
What number was
the human rights case that we
Oh.
are in litigation with.
Yeah.
Then
Oh,
it's Abrams
no.
Fensterman. I thought you said
Right, that's
Abrams.
not the solar. Right,
It
that's
is-
not the solar.
So they're
Abrams
completely
Fensterman is not
different.
solar.
Okay, so those are completely different attorneys.
Yes,
Okay, so we currently have 3 different legal legal representation firms for the town of,
4,
okay,
Four.
4.
yes.
Who's the 4th one?
Steinman, and Steinman.
And what do they do?
They handle our litigation.
The Chuck Steinman supervisor, Chuck does our our criminal prosecution. So if we have a dog bite case or something like that in the town court, Chuck
Okay.
has handled that for many years.
Okay, all right, did not know that. Thank you very much. And the last thing that I came across as I was signing the vouchers was that we have paid in full to the firm Edmunds GovTech that will be doing our website. We've now paid them in full. My question is, when are we going to be up and running with the new website? I
That-
know that you can't answer that now, but I'm just interested. Now that they've got their money, I hope they work quickly.
The forecast is before April 30th.
Oh, wow. Very nice. Okay. Thank you very much. And so I have a second to approve the vouchers. We're
I
good.
did.
Okay.
Councilman Wolver,
Aye.
Councilwoman Corbin,
Aye,
Councilwoman Wickerham,
Aye.
Councilman Lang,
Aye.
Supervisor Cusey.
Aye. Thank you,
and
Councilperson.
Supervisor, if I, Councilwoman Wickerham talked about the road salt and the other items, if I could just add the other large items for our residents to know.
Yes, you
There
can.
was workman's compensation for 6,480. There was our Excelis under 65 for 17,534. There was the engineering fees for Forefront for 14,023, which will be reimbursed through their escrow. And just like town clerk, did you get your new laptop?
We did get the new laptop. I did bring it home, but I had not had a chance to put it on my Wi-Fi. So I'm using the older laptop, but they should be up and
Yeah,
running
that's
once we
great.
put everything together.
That's great. I saw it on the abstract, so I'm a little late, but finally here. That's good news. That's all, Supervisor.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Councilperson Wickerham, for doing the abstract.
Mhm.
We'll now move on to reports from board members and department heads. We can start with Councilperson Corbin. Do you have any report?
Yes, I do. And if I was a speed reader, you would all be happy with me because I do have quite a lengthy report. So please bear with me. I attended the planning board meeting as a tier 3 solar liaison last week. I was unable to attend the library board meeting because they meet on the same nights. I attended a roundtable discussion with Congressman Chris Jacobs. Discussion with Congressman Jacobs. He's serving on the Ag Committee in Congress. Discuss the COVID relief bill recently passed by Congress. Since he's on the Agricultural Committee, he was interested to hear about all the local towns and their industrial solar installations. And given he used to be a New York State representative, the local municipalities, and the loss of some of our rights under home rule, he wanted to get people's opinions on that. I attended a Zoom meeting for the New York State Archaeological Association last week. Dr. Joe Stallman of the Seneca Nation, he is the Tribal Preservation Historian's Office, gave a talk on unmarked burial laws in New York State, which actually New York State does not have one. The federal government has a law, and many states have laws protecting unmarked burial sites. The update on the town website, as you just briefly heard, the target date is April 30th. The vendor says we're right on target, and the next 10 days, we hope to have what we call a beta version for Catherine Hankins, the supervisor, secretary, and myself to really start playing with and getting more input. So that's coming along very well. A horse's friend just reached back out to the town in regards to leasing potentially some of the buildings on the Rush Riverside Refuge, the former Bosse's property. Councilwoman Wickerham and I had worked on that in very briefly in just one meeting. So if Councilwoman Wickerham is still willing to meet with me, the two of us can meet and see where we're going to move forward. Are you still game for that?
I'm still game, but I'm still also looking for their financials. So if you don't mind reaching out and having them submit their last 3 years of financials, I'd really appreciate that.
Will do.
Thank you.
Next week, I'll be attending a
make-
webinar on wind. Oh, sorry, Attorney Mancuso.
I was
go
just
ahead.
gonna say, I can make one comment. If they have any reservations about that, they can mark it confidential for the town's review.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Next week, I'll be attending a webinar on wind and solar leasing on agricultural land. I do have something we don't have to discuss tonight, but I'm hoping to put it on a future town board agenda. Given the conflict that I experienced with the planning board and the library board, I thought a future discussion there, the third Tuesday of each month, the planning board, the library board, and the fire commissioners all meet on the same third Tuesday of the month. And with board members, as well as residents and visitors maybe wanting to attend a planning board or a library board or whatever, I'm hoping maybe in the future that we can, as a board, have that discussion to see if maybe some dates could be moved around to spread that out so that we're not all bunched up on one night. Also, in reviewing with the town clerk's office, what happened last board meeting where we had an executive attorney-client privilege session and the residents were put into the waiting room. We think we may have come up with a way around that. Hold on to that for the future for another discussion of potentially putting us in a breakout room while everybody else is still included. That came from the town clerk's office. I thought that was a great idea, so we'll discuss that further with them. And last but not least, as the Tier 3 solo liaison, I want to remind the public that at our next town board meeting, April 14th, there will be a public hearing on extending the current town moratorium prohibiting large-scale battery energy storage system installations within our town. The public hearing is scheduled for 7:15 on the 14th. I did check with the town clerk that all required documents have been submitted to the appropriate departments, so thank you for that. And we are setting up a site visit of the Helios proposed installation for the first week or so in April with 2 planning board members, 2 town board members, the owner, and the engineers. So that was a lot. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'm done.
Thank you very much, Councilperson Corbin. I just would add that the 3 complaints I had regarding the attorney session before the last board meeting weren't gentle. So we really need to take some corrective action there, and you're on track to do that. So I encourage it. I think tonight I'm wearing the highway hat. And what I have to report is that the roadside plow damage from the snow has been pretty much repaired. If you have any plow damage that hasn't been repaired, be sure to call the highway superintendent and they will come out and fix it. They've also taken down about 95% of the snow fence. And that's it. We have a little bit of reserve salt going into next winter if we don't get any more snow and ice this year. And that's a good thing. How about our historian, Sue Me? Are you on the Zoom?
I do not see her.
No, I don't
Okay.
either.
Then we will move on to Town Assessor Minio and Augie, I'd like you to just give a brief report now, and then you can get into your presentation under old business, if that's okay with you.
Yes, that would be fine with me. Trying to figure out why I can't see myself here. There we go.
Augie, it says your video is on. There you go.
Yes. We're going to talk tonight about where we stand in the townwide reassessment. I'm going to answer and try to clear up a few myths and misbeliefs about how reassessments work or how they are conducted and why they are conducted. Hopefully we will create some truth and facts behind any misinformation that could be out there. And then we will talk about the markets, what led us to this point, and what is going to happen in the near upcoming future as far as our town reassessment is concerned.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
Okay.
How about Councilperson Lang? Are you prepared to
Sure,
give us an update?
I am, I can. On 3/11, I attended the zoning board of appeals meeting as a liaison, along with Phyllis, in this case I nodded off. And they came up with their chairperson and deputy chair, so we'll discuss that a little bit later on in the program. And then I also on 3/16 attended the Marathon Planning Board meeting that had several informal discussions, including the Moore Park, a playground upgrade at the Methodist Church, Helios discussion, and a site visit that's planned later on to see some elevation changes and such. And what else? There was a couple other things there, but it was pretty much business as usual. But I was able to attend those. That's about it.
Thank you very much. How about Councilperson Wickerham? Do you have a short update on your activities?
I do. I'll piggyback on Ryan's report about attending the zoning board of appeals. And like he said, we will be appointing the chair and the deputy chair later on in this meeting. I also was in attendance at the planning board meeting. As Ryan said, it was a marathon, but I felt really good at the end of it. I think that the team has planned to work very well together. There were a lot of discussions. Like Ryan said, there were 3 applications for being presented. However, they did not make any final determination, whether it be an approve or disapprove, because there was information lacking. All 3 applications needed some more information to them, so they will be coming back at the next planning board or the planning board meeting. There were also several informal discussions, and I really appreciate those informal discussions because When someone is thinking about doing something here, coming to the planning board to get the instruction before they submit an application that is missing so many things. I really appreciate that. There's one potential subdivision in the town that is more complicated than most. So I appreciate the planning board taking the time to help the applicants or the pre-applicants to figure out what they're going to need. So I really appreciate that. The one concern I have with that, and I'd like to get guidance from Attorney Mancuso on this, it appears that there were 4 town board members in attendance at that meeting. From what I understand, that constitutes a quorum or a meeting. Because we were there listening, is that a violation of the open meetings law? Or is that something that because we are, I mean, Ryan's the technical liaison, I'm subbing in for him, but 2 other board members wanted to be there and listen in. How do we handle that in the future?
Do you want me to answer that now, or do you want me to answer that offline?
I'd appreciate it right now so that we all know.
I
So
agree.
So the general parameter of what constitutes a meeting is whether the board is conducting business. And so the board in this case would be the town board, not the planning board. The planning board's meeting was duly noticed. Not every assemblage of more than 2 members of the town board constitutes a meeting if you're not conducting business. And so if members of the board are in attendance but listening and not conducting business themselves, then that's not a meeting. You know, any member of the public or any member of the town can of course zoom in or show up to the meeting and watch. If you start to conduct collective business of the town board within that setting, that becomes problematic. And so obviously I would always, you know, err on the side of using caution in terms of the town board discussion if more than 2 people are in another meeting. But, you know, again, if the liaison is there to, you know, essentially observe and act as a communication conduit for the planning board. And we had another liaison from the tier 3 perspective, but the 4th member, I don't believe said anything and was just there in attendance as someone to listen in. So I didn't perceive there to be any issue with that meeting. I would say, you know, to the extent that there are that many people in the future, to be cognizant of the parameters.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you so much for clarifying that. And that is my report for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I know, John, you've just talked yourself out of breath, but if you have a report, we'd appreciate that.
No report.
Thank you very much for your good advice. Now, something we've been waiting for is our building inspector, John Limbeck.
Good evening, everybody. I did submit my report earlier in the week, and I sent out a revised spreadsheet this morning on the permits because between yesterday and today, I had 3 fairly significant permits that I issued. One was for a 48 by 40 pole barn over on Westbrush Road. I did get one of the 3 Yorick Forest Drive single family residences issued. And I renewed a single family home that's being built over on Rush Scottsville Road. So I did send out the revised spreadsheet for that. That being said, I've received, we're getting a lot fewer building permit applications, and I'm pretty much attributing this to 2 factors. The cost of the building materials, components, appliances have all escalated, and in many instances, the equipment is just not available anywhere. Lumber has almost doubled in cost. Electrical components are pretty much non-existent. HVAC components, ductwork, different things, they're having a very hard time getting that. And contractors are not taking on as many projects as they normally would, primarily because of the material costs and the shortages. You know, they're going to give an estimate to somebody, and it's probably going to be no good at the end of the week because of the cost of the materials that are rising so high. So I've also seen that same slowdown in the completion of projects. People have pretty much just stopped working on things because of the cost of materials. So trying to keep a pulse on it. I am talking to a lot of folks that got permits issued in 2020 to see where we're at. You know, those that we can close out, we are. But again, some of the people are just going to wait till some of the costs of the materials come down. Something that I didn't add to the report that came about yesterday, I did receive 4 final electrical inspections from the agencies that we use, and they were for projects that never had a building permit issued for them.
Oh, gee.
So I've sent letters to the addresses and the residents to get a handle on what type of work they had done. One showed it to be in an addition, remodeling type things. Some are new power installations, and those are all activities that would require a building permit. I have particular interest in the electrical because we just don't want people doing things with high voltage that they don't understand or we're not aware of. So more to follow on those. I did receive a reply from Christian Schlesinger of Forefront Solar regarding the soil and the water testing that I had inquired about. Forefront feels that these issues, along with the other pollutants and chemical compositions, were sufficiently addressed during the seeker process with the town. And it's just a reminder that future Tier 3 solar project reviews should address this topic so that we're, you know, doing it at a more appropriate time. Just a reminder that next week I'm going to be participating in a 4-hour webinar next Tuesday on erosion and sediment control that Monroe County and the DEC are sponsoring. And the last item I've got, we had a staff meeting last week, and I noted that I'm going to be back down in Florida from April 7th, returning to the office on the 14th, but I will be able to work my mornings down there, and I'm working with all the open permits that I got so that we're not in any type of conflict for any inspection. So that's my report. If anybody has any questions or comments, I'd be glad to address those.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
I was told by someone that plywood is $42 a sheet. Do you know if that's so?
Yeah,
Yes, it is.
Oh, my Lord.
I
Oh, my
think
Lord.
Councilperson Woolover can attest to what's going on with the materials. It's just out of sight.
Crazy.
That's bad. Well, is and Officer Tracy with us? Well, now we
I
can get
did
in.
not- did not-
Now we can get into Councilperson Woolever's lament about material costs.
Materials are really expensive right now and supply is poor.
Holy smokes.
But I attended the fire commissioners meeting. Things are going well for the fire department, always looking for volunteers. You know, anyone who's interested, they're always looking for volunteers. Barrow Architecture has done their review of the 1911 house. We should be getting their report 4 to 6 weeks. See what the standing is on that. And that's about my report.
And can I ask you a question on the Barrow report?
Yeah.
Did they solicit comments from other stakeholders as to what the possibilities of that building could be used for? Or are they only going with the one plan by the Historical Society?
My understanding is they were doing the overall, the Historical Society's plan, plus just the overall condition of the house is the main focus of their look at of the house.
Did you share the reports from the committee, the committee meetings that we had, the ones that Victoria started and the subsequent meetings after Victoria resigned her chairman of the, because those had some other pieces of information that would have been important. Were you able to share that with them?
Catherine Hankins gave them all the information that was available. I'm not sure if that was in part of the package that she gave them.
Okay, my concern is that they don't have all of the input necessary to make an informed decision on whether the building's viable or not. And that's the reason that I bring it up.
The overall scope of it is well, the viability of it. How much is it gonna cost to get it to a usable for any kind of use?
I
Okay.
think that's the bottom line.
Well, I guess I'm looking to make sure that they understand that some community members would like it to be a multi-purpose building, not a single-use building. And if they understand that, then I'm happy to I'm happy that they're considering that. But if they didn't have that understanding from the very beginning, I'm worried that their report will come back a little bit short of all of the information that we might need to make a decision.
They should know that. I agree.
Okay.
Thank you to both of you.
Yeah, and Supervisor Cusi, I missed one little piece of mine. It'll be very quick. The Comprehensive Plan Committee, whatever the title of them. I've had a conversation with both of the co-chairs. They are in the process of contacting all of the committee members and will be planning their meetings and their agendas. Hopefully we'll be hearing something in the next week or so. So that's the comprehensive plan update is in progress.
Thank you for that.
Mhm.
How about Town Clerk Busey? Do you have a report?
Yes, I do. The February monthly report was submitted to the supervisor with revenue of $8,708.54 and $89.12 was sent out for licensing revenues. Both my deputy and myself attended the Monroe County Clerks and Collectors Training that normally goes on a rotating basis to the other towns within the county. Also attended the New York State Archive Court Recording and Retention webinar. Was very informational about court records, and hopefully we'll be getting our records room back together after the roof project is complete. We're looking to find some of the records right now, and it's a little difficult to get into them. Both my deputy and myself will be attending the Association of Towns NISTICA annual conference training, April 26th to the 28th, and I have supplied a resolution to the town board for approval. The funds have been budgeted, and the resolution has been forwarded. The cost will be $250 collectively together because it is virtual. So I wish that you would propose that resolution and approve it, although historically not actually for approval. The town and county taxes to date, we have collected $4,402,727.94, and collections will continue in my office through May. I would like the public to know that anyone that has their taxes escrowed through the mortgage company, the carrier that has printed all of our receipts for the escrow companies for Monroe County has printed them in error from the town of Arundecoit. So all of the receipts will be reprinted and sent out correctly. So they will come from my office. And as Councilwoman Corbin has stated, we have received our laptops, and our Pinpoint group has been working on them to get them working essentially for our Zoom meetings. So that is my report.
Thank you very much. Do you by chance have a breakdown of the town county of that $4 million?
I do. It is on my warrant that was supplied to the finance director, but if you would like a copy of it, I could give it to you tomorrow, but I'm sure that Christine probably has it.
Oh, I wasn't looking for a dollar and cents figure. I just wondered if you had an estimate.
I know that we have already collected our taxes. I think are 1.4 million of that.
Okay, that's close enough. Thank you
You're welcome.
very much. Do we have a library report?
I do not see the director with us tonight.
Okay, then how about our recreation supervisor, Pat Stevens? And Pat, I know you're here. If you want to give a short report now and then the expanded report on the Eagle Scout project under new business, that will be great.
Supervisor, I see a Patricia.
I'm
Oh,
here.
she's unmuted. Oh, there she is.
I'm here. Sure, a short report. I attended a school district meeting where we selected schools where we may want to have programs this summer. So they are looking at allowing us to be able to use their schools in the future. And I just wanted to know about the Horse's Friend. I know that I've been working from home, but I'd really like to be a part of that meeting when you have it. Amber and Phyllis, I'd really like to be a part of that if that's okay. But I will talk about this Boy Scout project in a minute.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We can move on to old business. And Assessor Minio, are you still here or did you depart? I'm sure you are still here. So the floor is yours to talk about the reassessment.
All right.
Have
Good
at
evening.
it.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor QC. Good evening, everyone. We are going to talk about the reassessment that's going on at this time. And we're going to talk about why it's being done, how it's being conducted, and where we're at this point. Pretty much in a nutshell, the last time New York State says that we were at 100% level of assessment was back in 2013. That is over 8 years ago. I do not know why it took so long to do a reassessment. I will not speak about people who worked before me. I do not know the details. What I do know is that it's been 8 years. As everyone knows, the market has changed a lot since 2013, especially over the last 4 years. Our level of assessment last year was at 84%, and the state has been pushing us to get this reassessment done. So we started this project with the help of the state last year, back in September, and we are at a certain point now where later this week, the change of assessment notices will be mailed to each resident. In that notice, there's a couple of sheets of paper in there that say in detail what their options are. One sheet is going to tell them last year's last year's assessment and this year's tentative assessment. It would also have in their instructions on what to do and the number to call and the dates and the times where they can speak with me, the assessor, informally. I will meet with residents every Tuesday mornings and Wednesday evenings. Everyone gets about a 15-minute chat time with me. They can do it in person or via Zoom. I prefer in person. And they can set up appointments with the assessor clerk. If they do not agree with the outcome of that informal meeting with me, obviously the next step is to, as of May 1st, file an RP 524 form, which is a grievance form. which will, grievance day will happen on the fourth Thursday of that month. Let me rephrase that. Grievance day for our town will be on the Thursday following the fourth Tuesday of the month. I want to get that right, which happens to be the fourth Thursday. In the meantime, the whole month of May, I can still meet with residents informally. And if we do come to an agreement, it will have to be a stipulation also filled on the form for the Board of Assessment Review to agree or disagree with. So that's where we are at this point. What we expect to happen is once the residents are going to get this change of assessment notices, some will bother reading, some will not bother reading what's included in the envelope. For those who do read what's in there, they will probably call and try to set up an appointment. Some may be irate, some may not. Residents will understand that their assessment has not increased in 8 years. Everyone knows that cost of living goes up, cost of everything goes up, and so does the value of their home. But some may be irate. What I ask the board, the supervisor, the clerk, and anyone who works for the town to please be calm with these people and understanding. Do not take it personal. They are not upset at me. They're not upset at you. They're not upset at the system. What they may be upset is the fact that they see their house increase $30,000 as an example, and they expect their taxes to increase, and rightfully so. So let's not take it personal. It's just a difference of opinion. In this case, unfortunately, the state says that the assessor in this case is proved to be correct, and it falls upon the residents' shoulders to prove that information incorrect. We have data over sales over the last 4 years, and that's how we came up with the proposed value of their home. They need to provide such data as well, and it is also in detail in the letter that they are going to get. What works well is a recent appraisal. A lot of people have home equity loans, and their appraisals go a long way. A lot of people purchase their homes, and banks need appraisal. That appraisal also goes a long way. While I'm on that subject, let me quickly touch upon the base of a difference of the appraisal and an assessment. Both do give a value to a home. However, an appraisal is mainly and 100% used by banks. Banks want an appraisal before they loan people money, and everyone knows why. And that's what an appraisal is. An appraiser, such as myself, I'm also an appraiser, part-time, we appraise one home at a time. We can't appraise a street, we can't appraise a block of homes, or we can't appraise a town. We appraise one home, and we come to that appraisal by comparing that home to other similar homes that have sold in the neighborhood over the last 6 months to a year. And the bank uses that information and then decide whether they wish to loan out the money or not. An assessment is only used for tax purposes. Now, let me explain that. The assessor has nothing to do with taxes. We do not deal with property taxes. We do not deal with tax rates. That is a whole different body that deals with that. So if residents are upset that their tax rates are high or they're paying too much taxes in general, that is not something that the assessor can help them with. All we deal with is values, home values, and exemptions in our office. We do not talk taxes. We do not deal with taxes or tax rates. So I want the residents to also understand that as well. So why are we doing a reassessment? From time to time, we have to do a reassessment because home values increase. And if we do not bring them to full market value, there may be a chance that some people are paying more than their fair share and people are paying less than their fair share. And it is the town's assessor number one job is to make sure that everyone is paying their fair share. The assessor needs to make sure, it is my number one goal, to make sure that the tax burden is distributed evenly and equitable among the residents. Let me bring an example. 8 years ago, there were 3 houses, a ranch, a colonial, and a split level. All 3 were assessed at $100,000. Fantastic. All 3 were paying the same amount of money as their tax burden. However, over the last 8 years, Due to our aging population, ranches have increased over 80%, maybe 100%, while colonials may have increased 50% and maybe split levels about 20%. So today, that ranch could be worth 300,000, that colonial could be worth 200,000, and that split 150,000. However, if they're all still assessed at 100,000, what that means is two of those people are overpaying and one is underpaying. And that is not fair. It is my job, and I took an oath to swear to the state and to uphold this law that I will distribute the assessment roll fairly, equitably, and even amongst the residents of our fine town. Also, some of the results of our current reassessment. I will bring those up to date now. So during the assessment, I reviewed the market values of all the properties in the town. And based on changes in the real estate market, I will determine which assessment go up and which go down. Obviously, the only ones that went down are ones that lost something. They lost a garage or burnt something burnt down, or they got rid of a deck or blah, blah, blah. Most of them, most of the properties in the town did increase in value. Like I said, we haven't been at 100% in 8 years, and the market has changed a lot in 8 years. What we found through GRAR, Greater Rochester real estate market, and they are pretty much all over New York State. They once a year they come up with facts about what the market has been doing. It comes to no surprise to everyone that New York State right now, our region, Upper New York State, is one of the hottest in the country. Most of the reasons for that is that people have become aware that we have great schools. Our climate is not that bad. Our schools are fantastic. Our education system, our hospitals. But more importantly, a guy in Manhattan who pays $2.5 million for a 1,800 square foot loft can get a 4,000 square foot home in the town of Rush for 425,000. To that person, that's a great deal. Unfortunately, or fortunately, as you ask some of your realtors' friends, all of them will tell you that a lot of people from New York City and California and the West Coast have been purchasing homes in our beautiful Monroe County, or I should say Upper New York State area. That has caused prices to go up because the demand is so high. And unfortunately, due to COVID, a lot of people chose to stay home and fix their home. They had all this extra time, so they invested in their homes. Yes, are they being punished because their assessment may increase because their houses are in great shape? However, because they're keeping their homes and they're making them more valuable, they're not selling them. So less housing market, less housing stock out there for people to buy, more buyers buying these homes have caused something like over the last 4 years in Monroe County alone, the average sale price of home has increased 27.5%. In our town alone, in Monroe County alone, between 2019 and 2020, home values increased 10.4%. So in the last 4 years in Monroe County in general, the average sale price has increased over 27%. We haven't done a reassessment in 8 years. So is people's assessment going to go up? Yes. The market drives this, and the market is starting us to do so. Bless you. Bless you. What we have found in our town after we ran all the numbers, we have found that residential properties are average about 25% increase in the town. When we add other roll sections, and what I mean by other roll sections, I mean by when we add commercial property, state-owned property, town-owned property, wholly exempt property like churches and learning institutions and hospital, it bumps that up to 28%. Now, does that mean that every house in Rush went up 28%? No, obviously that's an average. Some went up as little as 20, 21%. Some went up as high as 35%. Some went up even as far as 50%. Due to it was assessed at 100,000, they just sold it for 350. Their assessment went up to 350. That's 350%. The computer program that we have that values these properties, all the properties, I should say, extracts current sales and adjusts accordingly. So that 28% now debunks a lot of myths. Because the town average is 28%, assuming the math, and math is not opinion, math is based on facts. If these things are to hold true, the town average went up 28%. If your assessment went up 28%, your taxes should not change. Make sense? If your assessment went up 30%, your taxes should increase about 2%. And if your assessment went up 25%, your taxes should decrease by 3%. What is that based on? That's based on last year's levy, last year's town budget, last year's county budget, and last year's school budget. Now, are those budgets going to change for next year? Probably. Is the increase in assessment and decrease in town tax rates and county tax rates and decrease in school tax rates going to cover the assessment increase? Probably not. Generally, I've done about 5 of these now for large towns and small towns. The town tax rate does drop as the county tax rate drops, and so does the school, because the levy is still pretty much the same, but now we have more money collected, so we have to drop the tax rates. Again, if all the numbers were based on last year's levies, that would hold true, that the 28% town average, if your assessment went up above that or below that, your taxes would be accordingly adjusted. However, because we cannot control what the town budget is or will be, the county budget will be, or the school budget will be, we don't know if those numbers are going to hold true. I can tell you from previous experience, if your assessment went up, you should expect your taxes probably to increase. Will they increase a lot? That depends on what the town budget, county budget, and school budgets do. Like I said, the math works out that if your assessment increased the same as the average, it should not change your tax bill. However, we know that that is not to be the case. I did one large town, and we were so very proud that the budgets remained virtually the same for the county, town, and the school, but people's tax bills still increased because the fire district and the ambulance services decided to increase a certain amount, and we still got blamed for increasing their tax bill, even though we had nothing to do with it. It was strictly those other 2 special districts. So what I like to tell the residents of the town of Rush is do not go on fear or misinformation. If you have any questions, I will take some questions as soon as I'm done with this little oratory speech here. But do expect that if your assessment increased, you should you will probably see a slight increase in your tax bill. If you recently purchased a home, if you bought a home in 2020, even though the prediction is that between 20 and 2021, GRAR says that the average sale price is going to increase by over 10%. Even though you just purchased your home less than a year ago, expect your assessment to go up probably around 3 to 5%. If you bought it 2 years ago, expect it to go up about 10%. Even though the averages are much higher than that, we are still far below what GRAR, the Greater Rochester Association of Realtors, is telling us. At this point, if there's any questions, I would be more than willing to answer them from anyone.
Augie, I have a question.
Sure.
How do you have guidance as to how often reassessments should be taking place, knowing that our last one was 8 years ago? Is there what that we should be following on a regular basis? What would that be?
Yes, absolutely. So for towns who have around 10,000 parcels or more, they generate enough sales where you can do an annual reassessment. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to reassess the entire town, but you have neighborhoods that you adjust. And that's how you maintain the 100% level of assessment, because there's plenty of sales. With towns that have fewer than 5,000 parcels, such as ours, it is recommended that we perform one every 4 years. Generally speaking,
Okay.
the state feels that 4 years, every 4 years, we'll have enough sales to create a database to carefully and accurately predict what your house could sell for in the open market.
Okay. So an annual review of targeted areas, but definitely a every 4 years, looking at the general area.
Yeah,
Thank
we will
you.
not, yes, we will not be doing any targeted areas in our town. We will just be doing a town-wide reassessment every 4 years. The only thing
Okay.
I do in between those years is adjust assessments accordingly if somebody builds a garage or somebody builds a new home or builds a deck or adds an in-ground pool.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
Augie, it's Councilwoman Corbin.
Corbin.
Is it yearly that the state gives us our equalization rate?
Yes, every year they
Is it-
issue an equalization rate. According to our current numbers, we already ran the numbers, we are to be awarded 100% level of assessment, barring us giving away the farm, so to speak, with grievances and informal hearings.
Thank you. And so even though a town our size is every 4 years, if our equalization rate was suddenly to drop to 90%, would it be advantageous to not wait those 4 years, but to get it back up to the 100% sooner than waiting a 4-year term? I'm just speculating. I'm not saying.
Sure,
it's gonna
sure.
happen.
We could, but unfortunately, the town will not generate enough sales. So we're in a big town, there's 300 to 400 to 500 sales per year. We don't have that many, maybe 40 or 50, and that's not enough to create a database to carefully predict what the market is doing in our town. So if it drops to 90% after 2 years, we will have to just bite the bullet and wait until the 4 years up. We could do one in the 3rd year, but 3 or 4 years is, but 4 years is our target. My personal prediction is that this crazy real estate market maybe is going to continue in 2021 as we readjust to this COVID situation. But I predict by the end of this year or 2022 to things to go back to normal. We have a very, very stable and steady region. We usually are very good between 1% and 3% annually. Even when the markets crashed in 2008, we fell flat to less than 1%, but none of our properties or our towns actually decreased in assessments or in values, I should say. So we in this region here are pretty steady and even keeled. However, right now we are, we have a target on our back as being one of the hottest markets in the country, unfortunately. But I'm hoping that in 2022 that'll die down and hopefully will keep us at 100% for a few years and maybe bring us down to maybe 95 or 96 by the 4th year when we do another reassessment.
Supervisor, if there's another town board member that wants to ask a question, there is a resident in the chat. The assessor said he'd take questions. I wasn't sure if that was just from the town board or from the people in attendance as well.
I think that would be appropriate for the people to be able to ask a question.
Absolutely.
Marianne Rizzo, if you are here, would like to ask your question, state your name and your
Thank-
address.
Thank you. Marianne Rizzo, 25 Stoll Road. Hi, everyone. So, we hear about our assessments going up and, it does feel uncomfortable. And I understand we're trying to, what I think I understand is that we're trying to get up to 100% value. But I just wonder, and I know we're talking, we have town taxes, county taxes, and school taxes. So I just wonder, can the town board determine the tax rate? Because as I understand it, our town has a surplus of money. And I know that there's a lot of ways we could spend it that are needed. But it seems to me as if the assessments are going up and we have a surplus of money, then why wouldn't our tax rate, at least for the town, go down. And I think that everybody on the board, when they ran for the board seats, they all ran on being fiscally conservative. I think so. So I just wonder, assessments are going up. Can the tax rate go down?
Augie, can I step in here?
Oh, sure, please, go ahead.
Yeah, it's my opinion that that question is valid, but not for the assessor. That question should be asked of the supervisor and the board. And I'm not going to say that we won't answer that. I'm just going to say the answer could prolong this meeting beyond what's reasonable, because it is complicated and there are many facets to that. So, Marianne, if you'd like to make an appointment, I'd be more than happy to handle that with you. I leave it up
I
to
sure
you.
would, Jerry. I sure would. Thank you.
You're very
Gary,
well.
can I make a comment as well?
You sure can.
Mary Ann, as the town board, go through the budget process and developing the budget for next year, those are the types of things that we will be looking at. We'll be, like you asked, does the town determine the tax rate? Yes, it does. But as we develop our budget, we will look at surplus monies and or future expenses. So that is a discussion that we will be having during budget times that will be starting probably in another 2 months. So attend the budget directors or the finance directors meetings with the board, because you will learn a lot at those as well.
I would,
Thank you.
I would like to add to that, we, the board, can, to some extent, control town taxes. We have no control over fire department, county, or school taxes, which you can obviously figure out quickly that doesn't give much leeway. But I think most people are happy if we can hold taxes, hold the line on taxes. But anyway, come see me and we'll talk about that.
Thank you.
And thank you, Councilperson Wickerham, for adding that information. Augie,
Yes,
got time for 3 quick ones.
sure.
Number one, can you explain quickly and easily the difference between an old house and a new house? In other words, you've got the same footprint on a property, one exactly the same number of rooms, same everything. One is 30 years old and one was built last month.
Sure. So the difference between the age of the house comes into play when it's usually around 10 to 15 years. When it's much wider gap than that, we cannot believe that a house built in 1976 still has the same kitchen, the same bathrooms, the same flooring, the same mechanics, the same roof, the same windows, the same siding as it did when it was built in 1976. So we give it a life, an estimated life, depending on when those things were remodeled or replaced. So that's what we compare. That's when we compare oranges to oranges. So if a house is built in 1976, but was just remodeled back in 2010, now we compare that 2010 home with anything from let's say 2000 to 2020. They all fall within that same range. Now, something built last month, unfortunately, usually has no depreciation and has no damage or extensive use to it. So that home would probably be valued more on a cost basis. We have a program in our system that gives us exactly what a 2x4 costs in this part of our region. All by Marshall and Swift. It's inside our program, and they can tell a difference between what a 2x4 cost here versus what it costs in Chicago. So a home built less than 6 months to a year ago would generally be like a brand new car. It would have a higher price, but it would be mostly valued on what it costs to build. So if a builder charged you $385,000 to build your home, you should pretty much expect an assessment being about 385,000. Now, if a 20-year-old home, which is the same style, same square footage, same bedrooms and everything, is 20 years old, but not because it was built 20 years ago, but because it was remodeled in 2000, you can expect the value of that home to be based on what similar homes in that area or in that town are selling for versus a brand new home.
Thank you very much. Last question.
Sure.
Being a licensed appraiser and a certified assessor, what is the biggest gap between the two values that you've ever encountered?
The only gap I've encountered in those, unfortunately,
Not that you place, but that you've seen.
right, that I've seen, is a lot of these appraisers or appraisals may be done by appraisers from out of town. A lot of times these appraisal companies are just doing drive-by appraisals, and they may not be familiar with the area or the neighborhood. Now, as we know, even in the city of Rochester, let's say you've got Culver Road, and then 2 blocks down, you have Park Avenue. The difference is like night and day. Only an appraiser from that area would be able to know that difference in those 2 neighborhoods and compare houses accordingly. So I have seen assessments at 250,000 and appraisals come in at 475.
Oh, wow.
Because the guy doing the appraisal is from California, doesn't even come by here, is just doing it with pictures or maybe hiring somebody to drive by and take a picture of the front, the back of the house. And then what he's doing, he's getting that house, comparing it to 3 other comparables within a 1 mile radius, not realizing that within that 1 mile, he's got 3 comps that are on Park Avenue versus his subject property, which is on Culver Road down the street, by a totally different area. So yes, I've seen that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next.
Anyone else have a question?
Augie, if our budget,
Supervisor, there's no-
Sorry,
Go ahead, Dan. I was just gonna.
if our budget was similar to last year's, then we would expect our tax rate to go down, town tax rate, right?
I've done 5 reassessment with 5 different towns. Every single time I have seen the town tax rate decrease, school tax rate decrease, and the county tax rate decrease. The difference, Dan, is that decrease amount doesn't always cover the difference of that your assessment went up.
I understand, but the rate
Yes.
itself would drop.
Yes, generally speaking, every time I've done a reassessment in all those 5 towns, all the tax rates do drop. Yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
All right.
Supervisor, there's no one else. There's no one else in the chat room.
Thank you very much. I appreciate everyone asking questions and especially appreciate Augie's expertise in the subject matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I bid you all a good night.
Good night.
All right, moving on to old business number 2, the Rochester and Genesee Valley Railroad Museum resolution. For those of you who haven't had the opportunity to listen previously, the Rush Recreation and Parks Association basically is the standard bearer of all of the property between the railroad track and the river over in industry. The Rochester and Genesee Valley Railroad Museum wanted to gain a little slice of that property, about 1.5 acres, to add to their parking. They have reached a agreement with the RPA, with the town of Rush, and with themselves. And I think John Mancuso, who has been very diligent in putting together this agreement, I'll let him explain it further if he'd like.
Sure. So as the board is aware, and we talked about the draft at the last meeting, there were a couple of comments that were provided by the Railroad Museum I incorporated those revisions into the draft that is before the board this evening. And then I also prepared the seeker forms that would accompany that license agreement. This is a unlisted action, which basically what that means is that the town board need not do a coordinated review with the other boards like we've done for things like Forefront and Helios. And so each board can sort of act in steps and independently of each other, and we can do a more simplified form. We don't have to do the full, robust 18-page part one and the 18 questions that come with part two. It's a more streamlined process because the action is actually under the statute is less impactful than a type 1 action. And so the form has been filled out to represent the action that this board is taking, which is approving a license agreement. And so what this board is essentially charged with is to evaluate whether any environmental impacts would be associated with the mere licensing of this small strip of property to the Railroad Museum. Things like the building of the parking lot and the lighting and stuff like that will be evaluated separately by the planning board, who has approval over the special permit that goes with the use of that strip of property. So in a sense, we're looking at a piece of paper that provides a transfer of rights and whether that has an impact on the environment. So I completed the part one and the all parts for the board's consideration tonight. All of it is my initial draft. The board can, of course, modify and revise any aspect of these documents it feels is appropriate as the agency that is doing the review. I have indicated based on the part one that most, if not all of these impacts would be a no or small impact, given the nature of the action, which is again, a license agreement. And so I answered each of those no or small. And then based on that conclusion, simply indicated in the part three that because this is limited to a license and because the planning board will also be taking a review of this, that there is no significant impact and the board can issue a negative declaration, which would allow the board to then approve the license agreement tonight. So I will stop there to answer any questions the board may have with respect to the completion of the forms. I did hear one thing tonight from the supervisor, which may necessitate a small, although I think insignificant change. I put 0.08 acres based on just an estimated amount of acreage from the form tool. It may be slightly larger from what the supervisor indicated.
I think, John, your figure is probably more accurate than the one I voiced.
I traced it basically running along the edge of the, based on the mapping that I saw from the RRPA that was circulated last. I traced it along the edge of the wooded area, going up and then over to their boundary line. So a very, very small, long rectangle of property. So I think I encompassed the correct area, but if I did not, someone please feel free to correct me.
I have no better basis to correct you, so I'd have to accept your figure. Is the board ready to act on this?
I had a question about the floodplain.
Sure.
I rode a boat across there before, so I've seen it flood.
What
I don't know if that makes a difference on the.
Well, let me ask a question with a question. What portion of that was flooding? Was it the elevated portion adjacent to their parking lot, or was it the swale once you go down that steep hill into the wooded area?
It flooded almost from, well, where the hill drops down right near where that parking lot's gonna go. It was flooded all the way over to where the bridge is.
Okay. So
I don't know if that makes a difference, but
it does not make a difference at this stage, but it is something that I think should at least be discussed by the planning board when it's evaluating the construction of the extension of the parking lot and the lighting. If there is a flooding concern, I think either the town engineer or if the Railroad Museum is utilizing an engineer, someone should simply review that issue and advise the planning board accordingly whether they think it's an impact.
In 72, I believe that was Agnes.
Yes,
From the railroad track down to the bottom of the slope, the water was about a third of the way up the slope. You couldn't drive down there. You'd have been underwater. So I think it is certainly something the planning board should react to. Any board member comments?
Not,
There you
not
go, Ed,
on
then.
not on the short environmental, but on the license agreement on page 2, under 3, there was a yellow highlighted area that I think if we are going to have a vote on this tonight, we would need to fill that license term in before that takes place.
Yeah, and I left that blank because I wasn't sure whether the board wanted to run it. Well, from what date you wanted to run it from. I mean, presumably, we can approve it as of, my expectation would be is if it's proved subject to the approval of the town attorney, we give this to the Railroad Museum. If they've signed off on it, then the supervisor can execute the document and we can fill in a date that's, appropriate. And I just didn't know how long that may take for them to bless the document. But any date really is immaterial because it's a 5-year term and it'll run for, a period of 5 years and it could always be extended after that. So it's probably going to be a small issue.
All right, thank you.
Attorney Mancuso, does it specifically say, though, that it is a 5-year term? I mean, it says 2026 in it.
Yeah.
The
does.
term of this shall commence on and, okay, there it is. Thank you. So I'm good with that. So we don't have to target the specific dates tonight if we do the resolution.
We
Correct.
don't.
Okay,
And the difference between a 5-year lease, John, correct me if I don't remember exactly, the 5-year versus the 10-year gives us a lot of leeway in terms of continuing if conditions are right to determine or right to continue.
Yeah, that's essentially correct. The shorter the time frame, the more flexibility. I will say in the context of a license agreement of this type, it is less important how we craft it because it's terminable by either party on notice. And so 5 or 10 years is really immaterial. If the relationship needs to be modified or terminated, it can be even before that period.
Would anyone like to propose a resolution or would you like me to?
feel free.
Both of the resolutions are in the packet that the town clerk has prepared. So starting with the seeker resolution first.
Is that the determination license agreement with,
Yep,
I don't, oh, I see it.
It's the
Okay.
fourth one down, the bigger paragraph.
Yep, I see it. Well, I don't see that. I just have Supervisor Cusey moved that determining that the proposed action to enter into a license agreement with the Rochester and Genesee Valley Railroad Museum is an unlisted action pursuant to the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act. That
Yep.
does it?
yep.
All right,
And and keep reading it. Yeah, that's the paragraph.
okay. That based on a review of part 1 and completion of part of the
Should
short
say 2.
environmental assessment form. The proposed action will not have a potential significant adverse impact on the environment, and the supervisor is authorized to sign part 3 of the short environmental assessment form containing the town board's reasoned elaboration and issuing a negative declaration pursuant to seeker. Do I
If I
have a
could,
second?
if I can make one comment, even though you read that out loud, I would request another member of the board move that, introduce that resolution and move it in the first instance, because the supervisor is being directed to sign the form.
Okay.
I'll read it. You got it? Okay, I got it. It's a resolution to determine entering into a license agreement with the Rochester and Genesee Valley Railroad Museum. I move that determining that the proposed action to enter into a license agreement with the Rochester and Genesee Valley Railroad Museum is an unlisted action pursuant to the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act, known as SEQR, that based on a review of Part 1 and completion of Part 2 of the short environmental assessment form, the proposed action will not have a potential significant adverse impact on the environment, and the supervisor is authorized to sign Part 3 of the short environmental assessment form containing the town board's reasoned elaboration and issuing a negative declaration pursuant to seeker.
I'll second it.
Councilman Williver,
Aye.
Councilwoman Corbin,
Aye.
Councilwoman Wickerham,
Aye.
Councilman Lang,
Aye.
Supervisor QC.
Aye.
And then now that the seeker is concluded, you can move on to the next resolution to approve the license agreement.
I can read that one too if you guys want.
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay, this
Yeah,
is a
go ahead.
resolution to authorize the supervisor to enter into a license agreement with Rochester and Genesee Valley Railroad Museum. I so move to authorize the supervisor to enter into a license agreement with the Rochester and Genesee Valley Railroad Museum, subject to review and approval by the town attorney. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Councilman Williver,
Aye.
Councilwoman Corbin,
Aye.
Councilwoman Wickerham,
Aye.
Councilman Lang,
Aye.
Supervisor QC.
Aye.
And that is it.
Then we will move on to new business. Number 1, Councilperson Wickerham asked me to put the newsletter on the agenda. And here it is. So would you like to lead off the discussion, Councilperson Wickerham?
Well, I'm happy to. I've, like the rest of the board members, received communication from our library director questioning the additions into the upcoming, and from what I understand, it was mailed out today, town newsletter. And I guess with reading the back and forth between some of the town employees and the supervisor's secretary, there's a significant change being made to the town newsletter that really does kind of put up some red flags on my part. The question is, we have a couple of additions into the newsletter this month, and I guess I'm wondering as to how did we determine who's going to be paying the cost of the extra pages, because they are advertisements from outside of the town. Also, I'm worried that we are going to be opening this up to other people coming and asking the town if they could submit information and activities, such as the Girl Scouts or the different political committees in town. They all have upcoming fundraising activities. So I guess I'd like to really talk about how we, what are the rules behind putting the newsletter together, and who makes those decisions, and how does it get paid for, and are we spending taxpayer dollar on something for private entities? So I guess that's how I want to open up the discussion.
Okay, and I welcome any others to participate in the discussion, but before you do, let me reveal information that I have because I did not want this to become an issue. So let me just talk on and on about it, and when I'm done, you can make any comment you want. First of all, there is no precedent in the newsletter that went out today. All of that has been covered in previous administrations by previous supervisors. There's nothing new here. The supervisor has overseen this newsletter since at least 2000, and it is in the supervisor's budget. I put it in my budget for this year, and I'm very, very careful to ensure that everything that is in that newsletter has a direct link to the town business. We don't solicit 7-Eleven for ice cream sandwich specials. We don't solicit Chase for plant specials. Everything that we've done this month has been done before by other administrations. I'm sorry, did somebody say something?
No, we just have a mic on somewhere.
Yes, could somebody please turn that chatter off so that I get confused sometimes, and I don't want to be confused by that. So I commissioned Mrs. Hankins, the supervisor's secretary, to coordinate the assembly of material to go into this publication this month. And I approved everything that she put in there because it's not any new precedent-setting activity. Now, we also looked very carefully to find documentation that specified what the protocols were of producing the newsletter. And there are no documented procedures, regulations, anything other than a supervisor would say, this is what I allow, this is what I don't allow. The next supervisor came in and tweaked that a little bit. The next supervisor came in and tweaked that a lot of bit. And now you've got me looking and saying, there's no rules, there's no regulations. As long as I don't break precedent, I'm probably in pretty good shape. So that's how we got to where we are today. And I welcome any challenge because I don't think it's a problem.
Well, I don't know that I'd challenge it, but you made a good point about the fact that over the years, each supervisor has had their own input into it. Do you think that a discussion should be had as to putting some kind of guideline, or at least making sure that the public understands that there are certain things that are will be allowed in it and certain things that aren't appropriate for it? Do you think there should be some type of written guideline? Do you think that that's appropriate?
I have a package here of history that covers probably about 20 years of newsletter production. I don't see anything in there that would give me any angst. What does get in there is redundancy, which gives me some angst. And what I see is a lot of what appears to be expanded information that could be boiled down a little bit and would get the same job done. I don't think we have a problem with any legal issues, as has been said by others. I've been very careful that we don't violate that. It's always been the supervisor's publication. The supervisor has always overseen the publication. I'd like to continue to do that so that we don't get into any kind of a free-for-all. But I would be more than happy to hear your suggestions, because I think that in my number one goal here is to control costs. If we can think of ways to get that newsletter into a cost reduction mode, I'm all for that.
Okay, so one of the comments that Mrs. Hankin made in her response to the library director's concerns was that the outside entity was going to be paying for those extra pages. Is that true? And how was that determined?
There was a offer made by the Rush Recreation and Parks Association to offer to pay for their insert. And that had nothing to do with town finances.
Okay,
That had nothing to do with anything other than, can we slip this insert into your publication? And I approved it because that is an extension of the town. It's not actual town administration, but it is an extension of the town.
so the supervisor's budget will be picking up the whole cost of this, and there won't be any supplement from an outside agency.
Not in the future.
Is that what pardon?
Not in the future. This is a one-time deal.
So they are paying for their supplement this time.
This time, yes.
And how much is that going to be?
Oh, I don't remember exactly. It's
Okay.
Hundreds, I think. I'm not going to say because I don't remember.
Okay, I'll ask the finance director. Okay,
Any other
we-
discussion?
so we're not concerned that other agencies or other outside groups will be interested in doing the same thing?
We will not accept any paid for advertising by any profit-making enterprise.
Supervisor, this is Councilwoman Corbin. I know over the many years, I have learned about walks by the Earth Day cleanup and the Arbor Day and things like that through our newsletter, through the Rush Recreation and Parks. I've seen the Boy Scouts over multiple years have their items in the newsletter as well as other items. So I know this has gone back through many administrations. Supervisor, there is a visitor guest who would like to ask a question, or they will send a letter later this week on this topic. So
I
I will
would
leave that up to you.
I would love to hear what the guest has to say, and I ask the guest to speak their opinion during the public comment session, because at that time we will be able to respond to them. And it will be a
All right,
two-way
thank you.
conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, we're going to move on to number 2, the 5 Points Road rezoning request. This was a request submitted by John Morelli, a resident of that neighborhood, and he has, I'm going to guess, 12 to 15 signatures from fellow residents who would like that rezoning to take place. What they are looking for is protection from encroachment of solar activity that could occur in that area. Basically. I don't know if Mr. Morelli is on this call.
Yes, I am.
John, would you be open to any questions that the board might have?
Of course, sure.
Did I
John, could Could you explain to the people that are here tonight, the requests in case they are not aware of it?
Me or Jerry? Okay.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay. There was some concern. One of our neighboring property owners was considering installation of solar along his piece of land that bordered several of our homes. And we were concerned about that. It was at the time we were going through a lot of discussion in terms of how to protect land in Rush, particularly land that has lots of homes. And at that point, Attorney Mancuso made a statement about the Meadowbrook property and how it could or would be rezoned to an RR5 zone with the condition that there would be 1,000-foot buffer from solar facilities. So we looked on our comprehensive plan and saw that in fact, the Meadowbrook property, but also our corner of 5 Points Road, is the intersection, the northwest intersection of Honey Eye Falls, 5 Points Road and 5 Points Road, was in fact recommended by the comprehensive plan for this type of rezoning to RR5. So we thought with that in mind, that it would be appropriate for us to ask the board to consider rezoning. And, you know, I find it interesting because, you know, having been on the planning board for so long and trying to get some of this rezoning, the recommended rezoning done, it's always so difficult because the town, you know, has to consider, do we pay people to do these rezoning? Now here we have a number of residents who are stepping forward and saying, hey, we would like to go along with what the comprehensive plan recommends, and in fact, have our property rezoned to the RR5, which would, with the 1,000-foot buffer to protect us from encroaching
Okay.
solar facilities. So that's kind of how it came about. And forgive me if I left something out, but.
Attorney Mancuso,
Yes.
given that this board does not have experience with rezoning parcels on request of the residents, can you give us a simple and quick outline of what our next step might be, listening to this proposal or request, if you will?
Well, Supervisor Kusi, before Attorney Mancuso answers that, I'm looking at the documentation that we were provided, and it looks as though Mr. Morelli has submitted the request for initial review by the town board. There are a couple of items on it that he did, well, actually 3 items that he did check no, or the town clerk checked no when he submitted this. Should we have a complete set of documents before we discuss and make decisions on this? I know what the process is because we did it just a few weeks ago. I mean, we talked about it a few weeks ago with the Moore development, but this one, this is the first we're seeing of this new form that we've designed. Should we be sticking to it?
Well, that's part of what I asked for Attorney Mancuso to guide us on.
If I could just interject a little clarification, because some of this has to do with confusion. When we had originally submitted the application over a year and a half ago, we weren't, well, there wasn't an application for this,
Right.
the request. We were not asked to fill in any of this stuff, and this was only passed at the last board meeting. Yet it was imposed upon us even though we had applied, our application predated it. Having said that, I did not actually complete the full environmental assessment form and came in with the application without that. I spoke to Councilwoman Corbin at that point, and she recommended that it be done. So I went back and we did it. It has been submitted, and it's somewhere. You guys have it. Oh, it was on March 19th, it looks like. I can't see. We submitted, and I signed as a professional engineer, the environmental assessment form. The other question, I think there was only 2 no's on there, one having to do with the environmental assessment and the other having to do with the $150 fee. Again, you know, if, as I read through it and over again, it says, if it has to go to the planning board, and that was probably the case back then. So it's not so much no that we have no intention of doing it. If it's proper and in accordance with, you know, as I said, we submitted this 1.5 years ago. We would like some consideration of the fact that it's been ignored for all that time. But we're not fighting anything that's on this application. We just didn't know what, in view of the fact that we had submitted 1.5 years ago, what we had to do this time around. That's all. So I apologize for the confusion.
And I can appreciate that, but you've got 3, at least 2 new board members on here that have never seen this before. So it's brand new to us.
And that's.
The town clerk has her hand up.
Attorney Mancuso to give us guidance. I did forward the application package to him. And I think whatever needs to be addressed, he will address so that we can go forward in the correct manner.
Town clerk, you've had your hand raised.
Well, hopefully the town attorney and the town board can answer this, because Mr. Morelli did submit the 10 copies of his application, but he answered everything in both columns. So I didn't answer anything. I didn't think that I was the one to answer them. I thought the town board was the one to answer them. And for the 10 copies, who gets them and when is the 150 collected? I thought that was after the town board would entertain being rezoned. So until that initial, yes, we will entertain the rezoning, it doesn't move forward.
Right.
In my email box was the town clerk, as well as John Morelli sent the entire town board all the documentation, the full EAF, his checklist, his letter of intent. And I know we didn't get the hard copies, but we did get the electronic version of them. So I understand those 10 copies, we need to clarify where those need to go, but they do need to, hard copies need to go to the town board, I would presume, as well as the electronic copies that we did get.
Well, somewhere in here, I did not get the EAS.
I believe it was on Friday. He sent a second email to us all saying, sorry, and sent us that.
I believe it was on Friday.
So is that the normal procedure? Is it going to, I thought it was going to be received by the clerk's office and then I was supposed to disseminate it, but when does that occur?
Okay.
I need a little bit of clarification on, I don't know if Attorney Mancuso can answer that or.
Well, I can tell you that the only thing I know about this rezoning is that the town board is the only body that can do it. But as far as procedure goes, I've never been involved in that, and I'm looking for guidance. And I want to make sure we get the guidance from someone who knows specifically what we should do next and thereafter.
If I could just add something, Jerry, to Pam, I agree with you. I mean, I think that it's pretty clear that it's supposed to be submitted to the town clerk. That's why I brought the paper copies, but just because of the history of it and the confusion of what, happened over the last year and a half, I also supplemented that with electronic copies to everyone.
I know, yeah, I do know that.
So I have a couple of questions. Ultimately, the process is just now being implemented through the start of using the form. My recollection was that I think it was supposed to flow through the clerk's office. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that is the process to get this going with the application form. I also don't, the board may have to correct me in terms of when the fee was supposed to be paid. I know we discussed a couple different iterations of that. And I think we talked about whether it was just upfront with the application, whether it was only going to be paid if the board wanted to actually give consideration to the request, or if they wanted to have it paid if it was referred to the planning board. I don't think it was number 3. And I can't recall whether it was 1 or 2.
It was number 3, John. It specifically says it's understood that $150 fee will be required if the town board refers this project to the planning board for their input before any decision to rezone is made by the town board. Sorry for the interruption.
I thought that was revised, but maybe I'm mistaken.
That's the one I was given.
Well, that
This
might be the form you were given, but I want to make sure that that was the one that was actually approved, because I know we talked about this, and I could be wrong. I'm just asking for clarification from the board.
That is,
I remember second item number 2.
You think it's in the,
Did the town decide though, as far as the fee, if the fee is collected and the board does decide not to entertain it, it's gonna be in the 2-week cycle to return the funds? I mean, I don't know if you've thought about that ahead as well.
we can go back in the minutes and check as to what was said. This had to be, if this was approved, Councilwoman Corbin, this was approved 2 meetings ago? Was this the last
Yes.
meeting in February?
I believe so, yes.
So I think we can check, because I mean, my vague recollection is there was some debate about the work that may have to be done just to simply process this, and whether that was, in and of itself warranting of a fee being paid, like, processing any other request. But I simply don't recall the specific of that. I think we should check it. In terms of whatever was decided at the time, I would suggest to the board should be given consideration as to governing all requests for rezoning. I understand that a request was made by the same group of people, but it was many, many months ago, years ago at this point, to a different board under different circumstances, which may or may not still hold to be the case. And ultimately, I mean, it's entirely discretionary on the part of the board at that time, who simply declined to entertain it at all. And so that request was declined. This is the same group of people I recognize, but it's a new request to a different board.
That request at that time, as I recall, was delivered verbally. It was not accompanied by a formal request.
Excuse me, this proposal was submitted and received by the town clerk, by the town, on August 26, 2019. I have that stamped. And the whole idea that this concept of whether or not the town board needs to respond to a what do you call it, a request for rezoning is pretty comical. I have argued that the town does not have to respond to this, and Attorney Mancuso corrected me to say that yes, a response is necessary.
I don't recall ever saying that, John.
Okay, well, you did, and I recall it. And
Well, I'll disagree with you.
well, that's fine, because it just drove me crazy at that time, because I said I had just finished reading that it was not required. In any event, I see Mr., who's the gentleman who's bringing a rezoning request for, on 15?
More.
Mr. Moore is bringing a proposal, and I see that the town board is entertaining it, it's looking at it, that you're having here. This is a year and a half after these proposals were submitted, and regardless of whether the town board changed or not, this was submitted officially. There was another one that's submitted officially. The town board has not responded at all to this one, and marginally to the other. And now you're going on to, to deal with someone who has, a lot more money and a lot more, could cause a lot more trouble for the town if you ignore it. But what's that? And this involves no development whatsoever. It involves no subdivision. It is what the comprehensive plan calls for. And here you have citizens coming forward and saying, yes, rezone our land to correspond with the town board, with the comprehensive plan recommends, and which you yourself have said this RR5 zone would provide this 1,000 foot buffer, which would be the protection. And that's what prompted us to do that. So, whether we're, I do question whether these fees that are being established last week should even be applied to something that was applied a year and a half ago, that was applied for a year and a half ago. Troubles me, but that is not the issue. I mean, if that's what it is, we'll do it. The issue is we've submitted something to the town board, and the town board has chosen to, has not acted on it in any way, has not turned it down. It was submitted in writing. I keep hearing that it was not. And if that is true, if it was not distributed, then there's a problem in your process, and you owe us some, I think, recompense or some consideration for the fact that we've been waiting a year and a half without a word from you. And I have reminded the town board in March, of 2021. I did it earlier. I did it last year, and nothing. So I'm not trying to make trouble. We just put something on the board here, a proposal to the board, and we don't understand why the board would not act responsibly and respond to us in any way.
John, for the record, I'd like to make a couple of comments. Number one, I am not aware of any other submittal being made other than yours.
How about Meadowbrook? Meadowbrook applied a week before we did in 2019. It was actually discussed at a town board meeting.
Okay, then let me finish what I'm going to say, and then you want to debate it with me, go ahead. Number one, the only submittal I have seen of an official request is the one you gave us in March, and we are talking about it now, and it is still March. So I'm a little frustrated that you think we haven't paid attention to it.
Well, Jerry, if you think...
Well, I'm not done yet, John. I didn't interrupt you, so please give me the floor.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
You're calling me a liar, but go ahead.
I'm not calling you anything, but you're paving the way, so please hear me out. The requests that you made in 2019, I remember hearing about, but I did not see any formal application. So I'm just telling you that. I want that to go on the record. I want to go on the record that I haven't seen any other formal applications. You implied that we have, and we have not. So we are in the process right now. I'm working on your behalf to make sure that we fairly and equitably entertain your request now that we have it in hand. Not that something was submitted to 2 boards ago, but now that we have it in hand, we are going to process it. And I wish you'd appreciate that.
I do, Jerry, but I would like you to acknowledge the fact that, first of all, the application that I sent you in March this year had a copy of the earlier application. And there wasn't an application at the time. It was a request, a letter of request. Request for rezoning from R30 to R5, submitted August 25th, 2019. That was attached to what I sent you. Then last year, and I could dig it up, I sent you another email bringing it up saying, could you please pay attention to this? I sent that to you. So I have, I mean, these things aren't signed, they're stamped by the town clerk. I don't know what grounds I have for making a case out of this, but I'm telling you, this was submitted and it was brought to your attention last year that it had not been addressed for over a year. And now it's over a year and a half and it is being addressed, and I appreciate that. And I'm not asking for special consideration other than just common courtesy for, acknowledging the fact that this town board, and I'm not saying you, Jerry, I'm saying your system, your filing system, your town clerk, your whoever, I brought the hard copies, you still don't have them from March. If I hadn't sent the electronic copy, you would not have this. There is a problem in your office. There's a problem in the town hall, and I am suffering from it. Our neighbors are suffering for it. We've been patient a year and a half. Come on. I'll shut up because I don't want to go any further with this.
Well, I won't shut up. I will just say that I appreciate you sharing your concern. Maybe there is a problem. I don't know. And the reason I don't know is this is the first official rezoning request I have ever seen, I have ever been involved with. And I want to go forth with it. I want to either deny it or accept it or whatever, but I want to make sure this board acts on it. And I hope that that's what you want us to do.
Yes, thank you.
I don't want to talk about 2 years ago or 1 year ago, although you make some valid points. I agree with that, but I'd like to go forth with this. And that's why I asked Attorney Mancuso to guide us in this process.
Okay.
Thank you.
And the next step is, does the board want to continue to entertain that rezoning request? Is there any information that you need to make that determination, or is it complete enough to make a decision about whether it's warrants consideration or doesn't? So it's entirely discretionary up to this board, either based on the information it has in front of it tonight or whether it needs further information.
John, I, as you've heard me say a couple of times tonight, this is the first involvement I've had with rezoning. How does this request correlate with spot zoning?
So spot zoning would be selecting a parcel or parcels of property to rezone them in a manner that is inconsistent with the town's comprehensive planning or the surrounding zoning in the area. So if you were to pick out I'm going to pick an arbitrary example. If there was something in the center of town that was surrounded by residential R30 and someone wanted to come in and rezone that property, industrial, there's nothing in the comprehensive plan that speaks to that being appropriate, or it's blatantly inconsistent. Let's say that parcel was identified as needing to be R30. One could make the argument that that is an impermissible spot zone of a singular parcel of property. So spot zoning is determined really by the continuity and consistency with the town's overall plan, whether that's the comprehensive plan or other plans from a generic standpoint of what orderly zoning is to the town of Rush. So that's ultimately something that's a consideration for the town board as it does any rezoning. But not the only consideration. Just because something isn't spot zoning doesn't mean the board must approve something. It's again, it's a factor that should be considered.
Correct me if I'm
And we-
wrong. I don't see a correlation between the two scenarios. Maybe,
No.
We've had this discussion, we've had the discussion on spot zoning before, and the discussion was that this was not spot zoning, was my recollection.
And-
We've had it a couple
and
of times. that
The
it got
the
brought up.
definition
Yeah.
of spot zoning is an action taken by the town that does not appear in any plan. It's not a planned event. It's not a planned action. It's something the town is doing to benefit an individual. This is in the comprehensive plan, which just by definition invalidates the spot zoning charge.
that's why I opine that there's no correlation between the two scenarios, John. Thank you.
Well, Supervisor QC, being that this is really the first time that I have seen this, I need to do a little bit more homework on what Mr. Morelli is saying about it being a part of, a part of the comprehensive plan guidelines. I also would like to at least take a look at maybe, I live right over here. I want to drive by and see what he's talking about. The one question on the new application was that we are provided proof of ownership. I don't know how that works when multiple families, multiple tax parcels are involved in this, but I guess I would like to see a little bit more of and I can do that through Google Maps. But like I said, I need to do more homework on this before I can make a decision on whether I would like to see it moved to the planning board for evaluation.
Fair enough. Do you have a estimate of how much time that will take you to complete that due diligence?
For myself, I can have it done by the next board meeting.
Thank you. Anyone else have a comment?
Yes, I do. The hard copies, if the town clerk could put those in our mailboxes with the documentation that we were sent electronically, unless those of us on the town board would prefer just to have the electronic version. But if we're going to get into a process and procedure, town clerk, would that be okay to do, to make 5 folders and put them in of the hard copies for the board?
Yeah, I can put the 5 copies in, but what are the 10 copies for? Are they 5 copies for the board, 5 copies for the planning board? Is that how you determine that?
I think we use the same number of copies that we were using for the solar forms when we made the checklist.
Right.
But given that this isn't even a subdivision, it wouldn't even be going to the planning board. This would just be falling under the purview of the town board, because there's no special permit, there's no site plan, there's
Right,
no subdivision.
Yeah, I just want to know what your thought process, why that was determined to be on there, that's all.
I believe that's my recollection. So the electronic version and then the hard copies. So we did get the electronic version. If the board needs that sent out again, if you could do that as well, that would be great. And if Mr. Morelli could get the proof of ownership of each parcel, if you could send that in, that would be great.
And Mrs. Corbin, I don't know if I understood you correctly, but I thought our process was that we would be sending it to planning board for their input as to whether it met all the criteria for a rezoning. And then it would, just like the Moore project, it isn't a subdivide, or it is a rezoning of one parcel. So I guess I'm a little, I thought we were sending this on to the planning board, any rezoning request. We would see whether we thought it should go there. We send it to them. They do all of the necessary evaluations of it. And then if they agree that it meets the criteria, then we make the decision to rezone it.
That was my
Well, the plan-
understanding.
That was my understanding as well.
The planning board has nothing to do with rezoning. It is
But-
only Attorney Mancuso, the town board, that can rezone a property. The
Yeah,
Moore
I'm-
property has not been even referred to the planning board because they haven't turned in their checklist and formal letter of intent per se, but they are a subdivision once.
No, they're
if they
not.
were-
It's one piece of property they want to be rezoned, and then they will be subdividing it afterwards. So it's not a
Right, so
subdivision
that's
that
when-
we're,
But that's when they would go to the planning board.
that is not my understanding as far as the rezoning that we talked about.
Attorney Mancuso, can you clarify who is the only board that can rezone a property?
Town board is the only board that has jurisdiction to rezone a property, but historically speaking, the board has always referred applications, and they've been very sporadic, but the discussion that has been had is that the planning board the town board has sought the input of the planning board to get information as to the appropriateness of a rezoning, because the planning board is obviously a group of individuals with knowledge of the town's comprehensive plans, to give the town board information as to whether it wishes to proceed or not. Further information, but it only has recommendation and advisory roles to play. It is not a board with any jurisdiction to make a decision. And that was my understanding in terms of the process, that in terms of even the way the form is created, that effectively, if it came in that there was going to be a referral to the planning board to get their input up front. The board doesn't need to do that. I mean, the town board can decide this all unilaterally. That is up to the town board to decide.
Exactly. That's just what I wanted clarification. It was not a mandate of what the town board would have to do. If the town board wants the input, then that's absolutely our prerogative.
All right. Obviously, some of us need a little more time to do some research and due diligence to make sure we do the right thing. And I want to make sure that Mr. Morelli, having witnessed our intent, will not focus on the unfortunate past, but will focus on the future, which is where this board is going and focused on. So unless anyone else has something else to say, we'll move on to the next point of business.
Sure, thank you, Jerry.
You're welcome. Number 3, under new business, Recreation Supervisor Stevens has information to share with us about the Gaga Ball Court. Pat, are you
Who
still?
will be speaking that I can unmute them? I see Nathan with a Boy Scout outfit on. Is he going to be speaking or is Pat going to be speaking?
I'm going to be speaking. I'm going to talk about how Nate met with Jerry Cusey and myself in relation to a project that he would like to do in the Rush Park. Nate, would you like me to describe it some, or would you like to say what you'd like to do?
I can describe it if you'd like.
Okay.
So I would like to build a Gaga Ball pit, which is
Can you get closer, because we can't hear you.
I would like to build a Gaga Ball pit, which is like, it's an 8-sided court made of wood, where you play in the game. It's similar to dodgeball, except you don't pick up the ball and you're aiming for people's legs. I'd like to build it in between somewhere flat, like in between the playground and the pavilion that's at the park.
Nate gave us some information about what his proposal entails. Jerry and I agreed that Mark would have to probably be the one that would put the final approval as to where the location could be, because he is the parks director. I did send an email to our insurance agent as well as our safety specialist who does investigations and checks on our playground every 5 years. And they both gave input as to what they felt should happen. Gary Wilkins had mentioned that the Boy Scouts of America should be adding the town of Rush on as an additional insured to be able to do this project. And Debbie, who's the one who's in charge of the safety for the playground, wants to make sure that it's going to be properly maintained year after year once it's installed. So we don't have any costs associated from the town for this project. It is for Nathan's Boy Scout Eagle project. He's going to be the one making sure that there's no places for any of the kids to get hurt in that particular area. So that's all I have about this proposal. Nate, am I missing anything?
No.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, I guess, Pat, my only question is, what is the proposed time frame, and when will he need some type of decision from the town board?
Well,
When you
right
turn
now-
18, Nathan?
Well, Nathan has to do some fundraising to get the money to purchase the actual wood and the connections. But he wanted to get a permission from us first as for him to do the project so he could go out and raise the money. But Nathan, as far as that is concerned, once you get your permission and you're able to go do fundraising, how long would it be after that point, once we've figured out the location for it?
That depends on how long the fundraising takes, but I'd like to finish it before the start of the next school year.
Okay. So we'd like to start it before the beginning of next school year.
Yes.
Yep. Does anyone have any concerns about his project, or?
Yeah, I had one question. I watched the video and how it's played. Who are your target users? I mean, is it gonna be like a pickup game of Gaga, like a pickup game of basketball where kids are hurling over the boards there, like a hockey game? You know, I just, the height of the boards kind of was concerning about children kind of collapsing around the outside wall. So, but I mean, it's kind of new.
So the design I'm choosing to build is only 24 inches high, so I was kind of thinking that wouldn't be too tall for any young children that would want to use it.
Right, and who are your target users of this court? Like kids from the neighborhood coming down and playing a pickup game of Gaga, or?
That and any families that are using the park in the summer.
Okay.
And like I said, Mark will determine the location. Ryan, I'm thinking maybe on the other side of the playground. It's got to be flat, so behind the pavilion, somewhere around there.
Jerry, as I read the email from Nathan to you, it looks as though he met with you. And he asked you a couple of questions about how the insurance permissions for the project and things like that. How long will it take the board, playground inspector, and the insurance permissions? Is that something, the insurance piece, that's one of my big concerns, is will our liability insurance cover? Is that something that it does cover, playground activities, knowing that the school district has kind of outlawed dodgeball? And I know that this is not a real form of dodgeball, but it could turn into something that is a little bit more dangerous than just a,
Well, that was my job, Phyllis, was to, I know I went to Jerry, but also I told Jerry I would take care of that piece.
okay,
I contacted Gary Wilkins from our insurance and he said, well, the Boy Scouts of America has their own and it would be up to them to add the town of Rush on as an additional insured.
but during the project. But what about after the project? After it is now the town's responsibility for whoever is on there? Because it's not going to be the Boy Scouts' responsibility once the project is completed.
It would be the town's responsibility.
Yeah, so did Gary say anything about how our town insurance would cover it?
No,
That
because
would
it covers the playground and the basketball court as well. So it
Okay.
would be just one more recreational area that would be open to the public that would
Okay.
be covered under that umbrella.
Okay,
So, anything else?
okay.
Yep, this is Councilwoman Corbin. Being a former high school teacher, I had never heard of this before until an Eagle project was done out at Livonia. And I will tell you, the kids absolutely love it. I was very, very taken aback by it, but you know, it's 2021, new games, new generations. And the kids they really love it. So just wanted to share that.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks, Amber. Anyone else? Do you think that you would be able to pass a resolution so Nathan could pursue getting his money that he needs to be able to do the project? Does anyone have any problems with doing that, or?
Well, I think that's entirely up to the board. Me being one member of the board, but I had the advantage of sitting with you. And by the way, Phyllis, that meeting was with me and Pat. And we each went away with a little bit of a responsibility task. I think that I'm a little advantaged because of that. And I know the other board members have had the video. And I would have to defer to them to see if they're ready or if they'd like a little more think time about it.
Okay.
I think we should go ahead with it.
Do
Do
we
we
know the
have-
cost of the insurance? Do we have an estimate for the insurance that would cost the town to cover it under our current policy? I know someone said something about it, but I don't know if I heard a figure.
Yeah, I think that's a good question because Pat has been told by Wilkins Agency that this would be covered under the umbrella policy for the playground, basketball, swing set, slide, all that stuff. But I can't believe that they would add this without increasing the premium.
Right.
And I'd like, Pat, if you would call Gary and
Okay.
find out what the premium increase would be for the addition of this project.
Okay.
Also, I don't know which one of you took on the responsibility of making sure that the highway superintendent's feedback was put in there, but do we have his feedback about how he would maintain it? And whether it was whether he has any concerns of it being there?
The last I remember, he and Pat were going out the door. And I haven't talked to either of them since.
Marcus told me, he came in to see me when I was in Jerry's office last week, and he said that he would, be able to find the right place for this Gaga ball to take place. But he did not say anything more about, I don't think he thinks it's going to be high maintenance. I really don't. So that was not even brought up in the conversation.
Okay, so he didn't have any reservations about putting this in there?
No,
Okay,
nope,
None that I heard.
no.
okay.
But
I think,
I have one question, Pat, was the town going to be the one responsible for installation and maintenance, or just the back end maintenance, or was the Boy Scouts going to build it?
Well, Nate, your turn to go on.
Yeah, after I fundraise the money and buy the lumber and the brackets to assemble it, the Boy Scouts will put it in.
Yep, the Boy Scouts will be putting it in.
Okay.
There was an adult from Nathan's Troop that attended the meeting, and he, I think, assured us that adult oversight would occur while Nathan was indeed doing the physical labor.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, my question was leading to the insurance question, which is I guess taking a step back for a second, we may want to talk to Gary about whether any changes to our policy at all is really necessary, because if the Boy Scouts are going to be effectively supervising the building of that apparatus on town property, I think there's probably another way to do it that might be simpler, where, I mean, the Boy Scouts carry their own coverage just as they've been on our property in the past for other events. If they are being supervised, or maybe it's in collaboration with Mark David to sort of inspect and supervise the building, their insurance may very well cover all of those issues. And then our insurance will cover the usage of that after it's done, when it becomes town property. It's effectively a donation from the fundraising being undertaken by the Boy Scouts. They're donating the facility to the town of Rush.
Right. Right.
Okay, we will put this on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay,
All right, and I will find out if the town's insurance will go up as a result.
Well, we find out both the insurance and the other insurance question. And we'll try to make sure it happens next time so that Nathan can do his required fundraising.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Nathan.
Have a good night.
You do the same. We'll move on. New business number 4.
1 second, Jerry. Can you guys hear me?
yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Why, was that you running that vacuum cleaner when? Just joking. We can go on to number 4, a resolution to extend the incumbent finance director to April 30th. Now, I know that previously we've had an extension, and what you've got to remember is this is a very difficult situation because the incumbent finance director is in North Carolina, and everything has to be done over Zoom, which is going quite well, I'm told, by both the incumbent and the new. And you remember that this new finance director did not start on January 1. There was a month lost there. And I just want to make sure that she is treated fairly and equitably to ensure that nothing comes up after he leaves that she hasn't been exposed to. The other thing I want to mention is there's false rumors going around that the supervisor's secretary is doing training. Well, let me inform you that prior to any of this, Sue Knight, who was the former supervisor secretary, had responsibilities for some things in this arena, such as check printing and a couple of other financial related items. And Mrs. Hankins is doing no more than bringing the new finance director up to speed on those items. She is not doing the actual nuts and bolts finance training, but she is doing supplemental training that is in the office at the town hall where the incumbent finance director can't be. So I'd like to extend this to April 30th. And I don't think there'll be any need for an extension beyond there. I've talked with Dan. He said she's doing quite well. I've talked with her. She loves it. And I've talked with Mrs. Hankins, and she said that there's no concerns to be had at this point.
Jerry?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
that kind of begs the question then, if Dan Klimick and Christine both think that things are going very well, then do we really need a full month? Or would 2 weeks extra, or, you know, one extra pay period from the end of February or end of March, I'm losing track of time here, be enough? I guess is that Christine that I see on the Zoom call with us tonight? If she would like to comment on the necessity of having Mr. Klimick for another extra month, I'd be interested in hearing that.
Christine is on, and Christine, I invite you to respond to Councilperson Wickerham if you choose to do so.
Hi, Jerry. Hi, Councilman. Sorry, I was running over to the computer to unmute myself. To respond to Ms. Wickerham, I believe it would be beneficial. We have covered a lot in terms of a lot of the daily and weekly tasks, but in terms of stuff that is essentially monthly and quarterly and annual stuff, there are a lot of processes involved and certain circumstances that might, he might not have thought to cover yet that I don't necessarily know to ask about. So during the day-to-day, particular instances might come up, and it's wonderful to have him kind of around to ask. And once he leaves, I don't know how accessible he will be, but yes, I mean, the more time I have with him, the better, obviously. But there are some complications because, I am training over the phone, so that kind of, there's a bit of a lag there since I do not have him in person. So having the additional time because of the phone training, I think would be beneficial, but I leave that to the board to decide.
Thank you for your input. Jerry, the only other question I have a concern about is the salary or the cost, because it is not in the finance director's budget to be carrying 2 people for 4 months in a year. So I guess I'm wondering where that extra month's worth of pay is going to be coming out of.
The difference between Christine's step 1 and Dan's step, I think it was 5, for the balance of the year would leave a very, very small gap, if you want to call it that.
Okay, that didn't sound good. You said very, very small gap.
Yeah.
Is that going to cover what we need it to cover?
Between the money in the budget and the actual payout in salary.
Should be enough to cover it.
No problem. I don't think you should concern yourself, Phyllis.
Well, Jerry, we have to concern ourselves because we are stewards of public dollars. I have to ask these questions.
And with that, I agree, but I'd love it if you'd get concerned with big things and not penny ante things. I mean, big things.
Pardon me?
I mean.
Pardon me?
I'm trying to answer you. I don't think that this shortfall, if you want to call it that, will be a big problem to deal with. You won't even notice it. When I
Okay,
said,
and that you've answered my question. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? I'd like to propose that Dan Klimick, the finance director, is extended until April 30th, 2021 to complete the training of his replacement, Christine. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I'll second it.
Myself, Councilman Wilver,
Aye.
Councilwoman Corbin,
Aye.
Councilwoman Wickerham,
Aye.
Councilman Lang,
Aye.
Supervisor Cusie.
Aye. Thank you very much. We can now move on to number 5, the discussion of rules and procedures. And all of us received a copy of rules and procedures that were adopted in Avon. Councilperson Corbin took the time to go to Avon and discuss with them their rules and procedures for how they conduct their meetings, et cetera, et cetera. And when I looked through that, I said, wow, I think that's something we could use. And my analogy was, just like we don't have documented rules and procedures for the newsletter, it would be nice if we did. And I think it would be nice if we had rules and procedures for the conduct of our meetings. So I know all of you received that. And I would open it up to discussion if there is any. And if there's nothing to adopt tonight other than to agree that maybe we should produce that, go forth and produce that and adopt it after it's agreed to by the entire board.
And Supervisor, both Councilwoman Wickerham and I did outreach to a couple of area towns, and the town of Avon was the only town that actually had an adopted. We looked into Lima, Mendon, Avon. Was there another one? Councilwoman
Churchville.
Wickerham?
Churchville.
Churchville.
Yep.
And we were very pleased to find at least one as a starting point. And I sent the PDF to you all on the 10th. And then knowing that the discussion would be tonight with future discussion, I put it into a Word document for you and sent that out to you all today. So you could do your edits and amendments in a Word document. So that would be a lot easier than trying to redo it on a PDF.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
And just talking to the other towns, like Mrs. Corbin said, Avon's the only one that has it documented in writing, but all of the other towns do have a process and procedure that they use. But what they are more proponents of is regular, ongoing participation in trainings. The supervisor in the town of Lima, as well as the mayor, both of them have their council members go to trainings on a very regular basis. The mayor in Lima was it Michael? Michael just earned his association's supervisor training certificate. So that is, and Churchville said the same thing, that their council members and their supervisor do trainings, and they find out a lot of information and best practices that way. And that is how they've designed their process and procedures moving forward. So Avon was the only one that had it in writing, but the others did say they have specifics that they do follow.
Is that something that you would see a value in documenting, maybe outline type and passing that on also?
Oh, absolutely.
Would you do that, please?
I can do that. I mean, I'll start from scratch or from here, because this one is really relatively good. Using a very cohesive process and procedure when I was on the school board was very helpful. But I'd also, during budget talks, I'd like to see if we can put a little bit more into our professional training, so that we all have an opportunity to go to the associations of the town and those types of association meetings and training, so that we have a chance to talk to every other people, our peers, to learn about best practices and find out what we're doing really well and what we need to, maybe make some tweaks on. So, but no, I'll take this and put down a little bit. We don't want it so rigid that we can't be flexible, but I think this is a good start.
Great, I appreciate it and look forward to it.
And it's definitely a good start, because just as we found out with the rezoning checklist, if we don't have something in writing, we don't have anything to follow. So to have that in writing and adopt in our organizational meeting each year, and it can be obviously amended each time. So
Excellent
Thank you.
point, thank you. All right, I think with that, we can move on to the public.
Jerry, we forgot one thing. We've got the resolution for the town clerk and the deputy clerk to attend their training.
I don't think that's required, is it?
Well, but wouldn't it be nice if we
Historically,
made that a public statement?
Pam, what?
well,
what-
I have a question on that, Supervisor, as well as need to appoint the ZBA chair and deputy chair.
Oh, we need to do that one as well.
Right.
Well, we will
Sorry,
do
Supervisor.
that first. Who's gonna take the lead on that?
Which one?
The ZBA and deputy?
I suppose I can, seeing that I was the liaison for the meeting, if that's all right.
Well, I think that would be perfect.
All right, I move to continue the appointment of Lee Hetrick as the Chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals, effective March 24th, 2021 through December 31st, 2021. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, Ryan?
Councilman Wolver,
Aye.
Councilwoman Corbin,
Aye.
Councilman Wickerham,
Aye.
Councilman Lang,
Aye.
Supervisor Cusey.
Aye.
And I move to appoint Brad Herman as the Deputy Chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals, effective March 24th, 2021 through December 31st, 2021. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Councilman Wolver,
Aye.
Councilwoman Corbin,
Aye.
Councilwoman Wickerham,
Aye.
Councilman Lang,
Aye.
Supervisor Cusey.
Aye. Pam, while you're still on the mic, the resolution for you and Shelley to attend, is that required? Does that require a resolution, or is a resolution just a nicety?
Well, historically, we have put that in there, same as we do for the highway superintendent attending his training,
Then we should do it.
because it
thank
is
you.
using funds.
Okay.
Could I just ask one clarification, that when the motion is read, it says utilizing budgeted funds? I'd like to clarify in detail what budget does that come out of the town clerk's budget? Does it come out of the supervisor's budget?
Comes out of, yeah, it
Just-
comes out of my budget.
Okay, so town clerk. Okay, thank you for that.
Okay.
You're welcome.
I'll make a motion to
Aye.
approve the town, pardon?
That's okay, go right ahead. I was gonna read it, but go right ahead.
Okay. I make a motion to approve the town clerk and deputy town clerk attending the Association of Towns Annual Conference, April 26th through the 28th, 2021, utilizing town clerk budgeted funds. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Councilman Wolver,
Aye.
Councilwoman Corbin,
Aye.
Councilwoman Wickerham,
Aye.
Councilman Lang,
Aye.
Supervisor QC.
Aye.
And Supervisor, I know I always interrupt and I apologize. Now, given both the town clerk and the deputy town clerk will be out that day, I'd just like to make a request that there be full coverage for that business days that they are out, so that the residents, if they need to come into the town hall, that there will be someone stationed at the clerk's office counter to answer questions or maybe answer phone calls, or because town clerk, that's 3 days, right? 26th, 27th, and 28th.
Yes, I believe that the building inspector will be in the office, and the assessor's clerk will be in the office on their regular hours. We also have a depository on the wall, but I will discuss it with both of those departments so that we do have coverage. I know that we have had cross training before with my office, but due to the fact that we don't have permanent office personnel that have even been fully trained in their departments, I don't feel comfortable with having those other departments fill in. But it is very important training that we go to. We missed it last year and the year before.
Oh, and I agree, but given the reassessment letters will have been sent out by then, and I'm sure there will be many people coming into the town hall. I want to make sure the town hall is going to be open and somebody there to at least take names, numbers, phone calls, things like that. That's all. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for bringing it up. I think it's better to limp through the day than it is to be closed. So I think we can make it. We can now move on to the public comment period. And I hope there are people who would like to make a comment on anything. Please remember, there are people around you. Be courteous, be civil, and have at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor, and everyone. If you would like to write a comment, please put your name and address in the chat feature.
Excuse me.
And
Sorry.
Bless you.
your
Bless you.
phone call. You can unmute yourself. There is one question about the Jack Moore rezoning project. And I'm just needing clarification on this because I'm not sure how to answer it. So I will have this open to perhaps the town clerk, the town attorney, supervisor.
Mrs. Corbin, can we have the person
Yeah.
who's asking the question ask it so that we have clarity?
Certainly, certainly. Bill, would you like to unmute yourself and ask that question? Or if you, oh, Bill, I see you. There you are. Go right ahead.
There I am. How are you? I heard something
Bill.
disturbing. I heard something disturbing, and that someone who filed a zoning request feels like they haven't had much due diligence. I've been looking at the website, and I see that Mr. Moore is putting in a lovely recommendation for rezoning over on West Henrietta Road. There's a nice map, there's a nice video, but I was looking for some paperwork. I'm just wondering if he's filed any.
There is no paperwork filed to date. Everything has been pretty much verbal. There have been a couple of good presentations, but no paperwork in hand.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Good to see you.
Good seeing you too.
That is the clarification I'm
Alright.
sort of looking for. So
That is
looking back
what?
at the February 24th minutes, we'll be able to see some clarification on how that all comes through my office and how I deliver it.
Sure. Well, as far as I know, all of us are new at that, so whatever each one of us gets an opportunity to learn and share it with the others, that'll be a good thing.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Supervisor, there's another question on internet. And Ethan, if you'd like to unmute yourself and state your address, or if you'd like to type in your address, I can read your question if that's what you would prefer.
It'll probably be quicker if I just unmute myself. Good evening,
Thank
everyone. Ethan Christ, 8309 East River. And the question is simply about the lack of internet options, particularly for speed. Most specifically in our area of Rush, which is the old West Rush region. We suffer from one service of Frontier, supposedly DSL service, and it's nowhere near useful for anything that modern society requires. And the state has thrown money at it and made all sorts of big pledges. Is the town doing anything to work with the state or to persuade business to improve services around here?
Hi, Ethan. Thank you. Other board members might like to comment on this, but I'll share what I have shared. Up there where the old Wilmot Castle was, there's a new, I can't think of the name of it, provider that now inhabits that building.
Greenlight.
Greenlight. Thank you, Dan. Last year I called up there and I talked to a person who said they were still unpacking and maybe I should call back in 6 months. And they were very generous and listened to me, state the complaints of people who have complained to me. And that person said, call back in 6 months. We probably will be up and running then. That's what I know. That's what I was told. Does anyone else have a response that would be more up to date than that?
I wish I had one. I do not.
I can tell you that Greenlight will not be our savior. Their model is strictly based on population density and getting maximum ROI based on that. And there's very few areas in Rush, certainly not where we live, Jerry and Amber, that would qualify for that model. It would need to be a Frontier upgrade or a Spectrum coming in. I don't see Greenlight doing anything in our area in the next decade.
Mr. Chris, this is Phyllis Wickerham. You said that only Frontier serves that western portion of our town. You don't have access to Spectrum. Do you know why?
Spectrum ends about a mile up the road. They've never run any closer than that.
Okay.
Somewhere just around where Jerry lives is where they stop. Maybe just a little bit past the that little area where it's 35 miles an hour on East River Road before it goes back to 55.
Yeah.
Just right in that section, somewhere I
Is where
counted
they
the end of the
stop.
cable.
Yeah.
Yep.
I know that the FCC has grants out there and they had grants out there. All of that money was used between Spectrum and some of the other high-speed internet providers to put in lines. But once the money was gone, that's where, like you said, it stops right there. We have heard at the state level that because so many of us are home either schooling or working from home and everyone requires an internet access, the concerns and the requests have gotten louder and more of them. The state is trying to work with the federal government to implement more grant money so that these companies can do more expansions. But that's like all government process, it's going to take a little bit of time, but that's something that the town can talk to our state representatives about and see what they need to know from us. So that's something that, it's a good question, and let's see what we can do to at least get some answers.
I'd be delighted if the town board could make some effective noise with the state. I've got friends that live in areas that don't have the same kind of, we don't obviously have a ton of population density, but between here and where Amber lives, that section, there's ought to be enough. I've got friends that live in more sparsely dense populated areas that are getting fiber optic. We don't even get anything beyond dial-up.
Well, and that's
For all.
interesting that you should say that, because I had a conversation with the town supervisor over in Lima, and they are exploring that. So maybe that's
Yeah.
something else that we can do, is talk to Mike and see what they're doing and how we might be able to piggyback on it.
Very well, thank you. It's on the radar.
Mhm.
I appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you, Ethan. Thank you, Phyllis, for supporting with
And
facts.
I'll just add to out in the rural part of Rush, out in the southwest corner, southeast corner, a lot of these lines go through farm fields. They don't go along the road. And I know we inquired about one of the cable companies and it was tens of thousands of dollars. So,
You know, the frustration, Amber, I don't know if you know this, but they put fiber optic right across the street from me. You know, you saw that happen
Right.
last year, right? But it's the
Right.
support cell towers. I was willing to dig the
Right.
ditch myself, but they wouldn't let me.
I'd help you.
Supervisor, I do not see any other comments. Then the two people that asked to speak, is there anyone on a phone line that would like to unmute and ask any questions before the supervisor closes the second comment period?
I don't hear anyone
It is all
eager
yours.
to speak up, so I want to thank everyone for their participation tonight. Thank everyone for their input. And I therefore propose that we adjourn the meeting.
At 9:57 PM.
Phyllis, Phyllis, I'm working on it.
I like it, Jerry. Thank you. I'll second that motion.
All in
All right.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night, everybody.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Stay safe, everyone. Good night. Hey, Pam. Oh, Pam, did you leave me? Pam left me. I was going to ask her a question.